This is CBC Television.
When you purchase a vehicle, the details are important. We know that at Norton Volkswagen. We have the Volkswagen selection and the atmosphere in our new showroom to help you arrive at the best possible Volkswagen deal. Norton Volkswagen provides quality after-sales service too. Examine the Volkswagen details for yourself. Norton Volkswagen, Edmonton's original Volkswagen dealer. Visit us at our new location, 10151 179th Street.
I can't believe you said that.
Why?
It's so sexist. Sexist.
No, it's not.
Look, you just quit your job.
Right.
So I could apply for that job.
Wrong.
Why?
You're a guy.
Now, wait a second. Women can do men's jobs. Why can't I do a woman's job?
You're right. But I don't think my boss will go for it.
What's not to go for?
Experience, for one thing. You ever jump out of a cake before?
The CBC Alberta News, tonight at 6.
Midday with Valerie Pringle and Tina Srabotniak.
Good afternoon. This is Midday for Tuesday, September 15th.
On the show today, the continuing horror that is Somalia. CBC reporter Martin Seamungle has just returned from there, and we'll talk to him about what he saw.
And to help you make up your mind for the referendum today, a primer on how power will be shared between the federal and provincial governments in the new unity package.
The Toronto Argonauts are a disgrace, so say the team owners, and things aren't so swell over at the BC Lions either. We'll have those stories on our sports round.
And another debate. Anne of Green Gables is a subject of contention on Prince Edward Island. We'll have that story. But first, here's the Midday News with Noelle Richardson.
Good day from the National Newsroom. More Canadians are listing languages other than English or French as their mother tongues. The shift is largely due to immigration. Statistics Canada released figures today on mother tongues taken from the 1991 census. They show that the fastest growing first languages are Chinese, Spanish, and Punjabi. Julie Van Dusen reports.
Neighborhoods in Canada are changing. Immigrants are making their mark. They bring their customs, their religion, their languages. The latest census on language reflects their growing numbers. The number of Canadians reporting a mother tongue other than English or French has grown from 11.3% in 1986 to 13% in 1991.
What is very important is that there's an increase in the proportion of language other than French and English in the Canadian population.
The largest language groups other than English and French were Italian, Chinese, and German. The non-official language group which grew the most in the past 5 years was Chinese, increasing by 59% or 183,000. As to Canada's official languages, English is still the mother tongue of 60.5% of Canadians. That's almost unchanged from the last census. Anglophones are in the majority everywhere except Quebec. There, those reporting their mother tongue as English was 8.7% of the population. That's down from 8.9% in 1986. There is a decline as well of those who report French as their mother tongue in Quebec. 81.4% of Quebec's population reported French as their mother tongue in 1986. Now it's at 81.2%, a drop due to the influx of immigrants and the low birth rate in Quebec. The latest figures are a reversal of a 15-year trend.
It's significant because from 1971 to 1986, there was an increase in that proportion.
In 1951, 29% of Canadians reported French as their mother tongue, and the latest census shows the number has dropped to 23.8%. Statistics Canada also found that language groups tend to stick together. Anglophones marry Anglophones, Francophones marry Francophones. And when couples of mixed languages do get together, their children tend to learn the language of their mother. Julie Van Dusen, CBC News, Ottawa.
Joe Clark says he's willing to make changes to the constitutional deal to include the disabled, but that any changes will have to wait until after next month's referendum. The Constitutional Affairs Minister spoke today after a meeting with representatives of disabled Canadians.
I made it very clear that we cannot reopen the
agreement of the 28th of August until First Ministers meet after a referendum. But that I thought that it would be useful for them to speak to all governments to see if there might be some modification that could be agreed after that time.
Disabled groups want their rights to be spelled out in the Canada Clause, which guarantees sexual, racial and ethnic equality. But one representative of the disabled says Clark's offer today doesn't go far enough.
Coming down the stairs in Parliament as to
I think we have to say that we come out of the meeting each knowing the position of the other, but not feeling that we are have been given any guarantees that we will be included.
Two prominent Quebec Liberals pushed for a no vote in the referendum on the Constitution at a news conference today. Jean Allaire, who once crafted his party's constitutional policy, and Mario Dumont, president of the Liberal Youth Wing, both broke with their party over the proposed changes to the Constitution. After the news conference, Allaire told CBC that a group of Liberals is working discreetly to defeat the deal.
So we are forming a small administration or board of administrators, and we don't need more. We are going to have an office from which we are going to operate, and we are going to cover the province where we already have a network of sympathizers.
A UN agency says an increase in government spending is the only way to pull the world economy out of recession. The UN Conference on Trade and Development says the global economy is stalled for the first time since the Great Depression of the 1930s. And it says the private sector isn't strong enough to lead the recovery. The agency is urging countries to boost spending on public works programs without raising taxes. The economic outlook in the U.S. is still bleak. Retail sales in the United States dropped by 0.5 percentage point in August. That's the biggest decrease in 5 months. It was caused by a drop in the sale of durable goods, items such as cars and major appliances. Analysts say sustained consumer spending is needed to fuel a full recovery. U.S. President George Bush seemed overcome by emotion during a speech to a National Guard convention in Salt Lake City today. Bush had been widely expected to attack Democrat rival Bill Clinton's draft record. Instead, Bush described how difficult it was for him to send American troops into battle, and he read part of a letter sent by the mother of a soldier killed in the Gulf War.
The mother wrote, "As a Gold Star mother, it is difficult to accept my son's death, but he's alive in my heart. And I could be bitter with the military and God, but my son would never want me to."
Later, Bill Clinton addressed the same convention. For his part, Clinton had been expected to explain why and how he managed to avoid service in the Vietnam War. But instead, Clinton attacked the economic policies of George Bush.
I agree with the comment made by President Bush here today that we are facing a new and different global economic challenge, but I disagree that it has come on us all of a sudden. We have been in the midst of an emerging global economy for well over a dozen years now, and for a dozen years we have been governed by a theory of economic response to that challenge, which has been euphemistically dubbed trickle-down economics.
In northeastern Pakistan, more than 700 people are now confirmed dead after heavy floods. Hundreds more people are missing and tens of thousands have been evacuated. But the Muslim holy city of Multan and its 1 million inhabitants have so far been spared. Canada is going to play a big role in the UN's increased presence in Bosnia-Herzegovina. Last night, the UN Security Council approved sending up to 6,000 more peacekeepers to the warring republic. Canada has already offered to send 1,200 more peacekeepers as part of that group. There are already about 1,200 Canadian soldiers serving in neighboring Croatia. The College of Physicians and Surgeons of Ontario has toughened its rules on sexual abuse of patients by doctors. The Council of the College announced today that it has adopted some of the recommendations outlined in last year's report by the Task Force on Sexual Abuse of Patients. And the College added a new definition of sexual abuse, sexual transgression. That's defined as any inappropriate touching of a patient in a sexual way.
The College and the Council recognize that there is no such thing as a minor instance of sexual abuse, and that any comment that is sexually demeaning and any inappropriate touching is profoundly unacceptable and may cause significant and long-lasting harm to a patient.
The maximum penalty for conviction of sexual transgression would be revocation of the doctor's license for 5 years and a $20,000 fine. But members of last year's task force say today's announcement isn't good enough. They want the government to force the college to adopt more than just 5 of the 23 recommendations. Bruce Hutchison, one of Canada's best-known reporters and authors, has died. He was 91. Hutchison was a journalist for almost 3/4 of a century. His last column was published a month ago today. Sheldon Turcotte looks back on Hutchison's career.
Bruce Hutchison held top editorial posts on the Winnipeg Free Press, the Victoria Daily Times, and the Vancouver Sun. He got into newspaper work at 17, first as a sports writer for the Vancouver Times, later on the police beat and City Hall. His lifelong career as a political journalist began by chance when he was asked to fill in for a sick colleague covering the BC legislature. He stayed on, freelancing for several papers. By 1925, he was the youngest member of the Ottawa Press Gallery. He contributed articles and short stories to numerous magazines in Canada and the United States. A prolific writer, he once said he never wrote a word he wasn't paid for. The Unknown Country in 1943 was the first of his many books about Canada and Canadians. They proved to be both scholarly and popular. An autobiography in 1976 outlined his life as a working newsman and as a confidant of Liberal prime ministers. In his late 70s, he was still editorial director of the Vancouver Sun, doing his work by phone from his home. In 1979, Hutchison retired from the daily grind, but kept the title of editor emeritus at the Vancouver Sun. He continued to turn out columns addressing the problems of the country and the world. Bruce Hutchison, historian, novelist, editor. He liked best to be called a reporter. Sheldon Turcotte, CBC News.
And that's the news at this hour. For CBC News, I'm Noelle Richardson.
Haunting and gruesome pictures continue to come out of Somalia, where starvation and death are daily occurrences. It's estimated that up to 2 million people, 1/3 of the entire country, could starve to death. One UN official has said 500 children die of starvation every day. Those who survive will suffer the effects of malnutrition all their lives. The problem in Somalia started almost 2 years ago when civil war broke out. Now the country is in a state of anarchy, with gun-toting rival factions often hijacking badly needed food and medicine donated by the West.
There is no law and order. Nobody's actually in charge, regardless who says what. And Somalia, my friend, takes us back to the age of Darwinism, survival of the fittest.
Reporter Martin Seemungle of the CBC brought us those pictures from Somalia. He's with us now from London. Now, there was one suggestion made that Somalia should be buried knee-deep in food aid, that would be the one way to ensure that enough would get through. Would it take literally something that dramatic?
Well, the problem is that there's two schools of thought. One school is that yes, bury the country in food aid, and it will filter down to the people who need it. The other school of thought being that we can't bring food aid in because it's going to be looted. There's no way we can control where this food is going, and it's not going to get to the people who need it. But certainly the school of thought whereby the food is flooded seems to be the one winning out right now, because more and more food is being rushed to Somalia, and the general feeling is that that's the only way that sure there are risks, some of it could be stolen, they say, but the only way really is to just get more food into that country.
Is there a sense at all that momentum is shifting now, that the world's attention is turning more to Somalia, even though people have been sounding this alarm for months?
It's clear that the world attention is turning to Somalia. The United Nations is stepping up its efforts there. It's going to start flying food into the hinterland areas. It's actually going to start airdropping food in. The International Red Cross has been working there in very wide scale for the last 2 months. More and more non-governmental organizations are pouring into the country. It's still not many relief workers out in the rural areas where the situation is very bad, but certainly they've gained a foothold in Mogadishu, and they're starting to fan out from there. But there's still a lot more needed there.
Well, for example, in Baidoa, which is the city you talked about in your documentary last night, a city of what, 60,000 refugees and 38 workers?
Yeah, it's certainly the Somalia in microcosm. Here's a town that was once a prosperous area, and everyone fled when the war came. And now it's filled with these people who've come in from the villages. They've heard that Baidoa was a big center and that there might still be food there. So they've come in looking for food, and there really isn't very much right now. Food's, again, starting to trickle into those areas, but there's still a lot more needed. And so these people are coming in hoping that they'll get something. There's not enough resources. They come from villages where for centuries they had village traditions. They come into towns like this, and those village traditions tend to disintegrate, and it's every person for himself, and there's very little to fight for.
Yeah, you also think, you know, if this is in the cities, what's happening in the countryside beyond those cities?
Well, that's the problem right now. I mean, they're getting to some of these villages. The relief agencies are starting to get out to some of these areas, but it's only just starting. And what they're seeing out there is more of the same, more people who they were hoping perhaps it wasn't so bad, that maybe this was the worst. But they're looking at more and more villages where they go in and they find people who have no food left. They're about to move. They've got no seed to plant for the next planting season, and a tremendously hopeless situation. And these people are about to move. They're about to move to other Baidoas, to other large centers. And that's what the relief agencies are trying to guard against. They want to keep people in those villages. They figure if they can keep them there, then perhaps they can avoid more repeats of Baidoas.
Now, Martin, you were in and out of Somalia over the past 2 weeks. What did you see?
A tremendous amount of suffering and misery on a scale that I haven't seen in a long time. What happens is you see people that not only are they suffering, but there is no immediate cure for them. They're not going to get food right away. They'll get some to keep them from day to day. But you see suffering that seems to have no end. And what's tremendously troubling is the disease. Seeing these children especially suffering from measles. They're weakened by malnutrition. They're living in conditions that are horrendous. And then they get hit with measles. And they're just lying there in pain and moaning, and there is nothing you can do. There is nothing doctors can do to help them when they get to that stage, and that is tremendously frustrating to see.
Well, all the more so, I suppose, when you've been in the capital, Mogadishu, and you've seen supplies.
That's what's bothersome, and it's certainly when you see relief supplies coming into a port like Mogadishu. 10,000 tons of sorghum I saw come into the port, and it is still sitting in the port today. They haven't been able to move it out. They haven't been able to get it to areas like Baidoa that need it so much. And that's what frustrates the relief workers. They see this kind of thing, and some of them just throw their hands up. And what they say is, we have to keep going, because it's 2% of the population, the clan gunmen, the people fighting in this vacuum of anarchy in Somalia, that are really causing the pain to the 98% of the rest of the people in Somalia. And they say, that's the only thing keeping us coming back. Otherwise, they're tremendously frustrated at what they're up against there.
But you think of the hideous situation of, you know, these children with guns and the children dying of measles.
It's a tremendous contrast, and I think that's what makes it difficult for a relief worker in that country to see. I mean, the burnout is very high. Some of them say that there's only, in a place like this, these are seasoned relief workers, and they say, look, we can't stay here for any more than 3 months. We have to rotate out. That's the only way to cope. And when they see 16-year-old kids carrying AK-47s, basically commandeering food supplies and telling them where they can work and where they can't work, and then when they see 16-year-old children dying for no food, it just there are just times when you can see on their faces that it's just too much.
What is it going to take?
It's going to take an awful lot of food. It's going to take an awful lot more relief workers coming into that country, and medicine. There's a tremendous need for medical supplies. The water situation in Somalia is in terrible shape. Most of the wells were sabotaged and destroyed during the civil war, the ongoing clan warfare, and so water is almost as big a problem as food in Somalia right now, because without water they can't do anything. A lot of cases they have to mix the emergency food supplies with water, and that's the only way they're going to save these people.
Thanks very much for talking to us, Martin.
Thank you, Valerie.
Bye-bye. We'll be back.
Monday, I soak my dentures. Tuesday, I brush. Wednesday, I soak.
Wait, all you need is Denture Cream. Why soak when Denture Cream gets dentures twice as clean? All you need is Denture Cream.
Every day.
2 return tickets to Italy. That's our reward for using the card. Every time we did, the points kept building. And the card's with us all the way.
The Membership Rewards Program. Use the card, reap the rewards.
Opening night, and we've got great seats. It's our reward for using the card. Every time we did, the points kept building. Now that's the ticket.
The Membership Rewards Program. Use the card, reap the rewards.
When you've been burning the candle at both ends and can't get to sleep, turn occasional sleeplessness into sleep with Nitol's single trusted ingredient. And wake up feeling well rested and alert. Nitol.
Every year, the United Nations Development Program has a special task force conduct a survey of 160 countries around the world, then ranks them according to their progress in education, life expectancy, and purchasing power. Guess who came in first this year?
I've just received the midterm report card for the Canadian Football League, and it's not very good. Now, this was supposed to be the season the CFL would run and pass its way into the hearts of Canadian football fans in places like Calgary, Hamilton, and Ottawa. Well, it has. But in the crucial large markets like Vancouver and Toronto, it's a failure. The BC Lions have taken a catnap this season. They are currently resting in last place. The league is running the team because owner Murray Pezim says he was losing millions and couldn't sell the team for $1. In Toronto, the Rocket has returned to earth, maybe crashed, a mere mortal. Last season he could do no wrong, at least that's what his bankers said. He led the Argos to a Grey Cup championship. This year he and the team have done little right, including having a tantrum Sunday, which could lead to Rocket suspension.
Scott Taylor, Colleen Jones are here. Hello, you two.
Hi, Tina.
Okay, Colleen, now I have a quote here from Toronto Argonauts owner Bruce McNall. What he says is the team is disgraceful. They should be humiliated, ridiculed, right from management down to the coaches and players. What's going on? This is the team owner.
Yes, well, it's been an amazing turnaround for the Toronto Argonauts, considering that they were the Grey Cup champions last year, and now this year they're in last place in the Eastern Division, and they look awful, and their behavior on the field is even worse. When you look at the incident between Rocket Ismail in their big loss to Calgary on Sunday, trying to, I guess, stamp out Andy McVee's head. It looked like a really vicious attack on his part. Bruce McNall is right. The team should be embarrassed. They're playing awful, but their behavior is disgusting, and the Rocket should face a very long suspension. And of course, McNall's putting out a lot of money for this guy, $3.5 million, and the Rocket just isn't putting people in the seats.
Well, Scott, but but what's happened to them? Is it the Rocket that he just isn't playing as well as he should be?
They have no quarterback. It's that simple. They've tried Mike Kerrigan, they've tried Ricky Foggy, who's been a bust. They've now tried Blair Keel. They don't like John Conjemi. They have no quarterback, and it's a long history in the Canadian Football League. If you don't have a guy who can pitch it, you can't win games. They can have all the Rockets and all the David Williams and all the Mike Clemens in the world, but if you don't get them the ball in the right place, you aren't going to win. And when they didn't sign Matt Dunnigan in Toronto, they ran into a lot of problems. Now, Matt Dunnigan hasn't set the world on fire in Winnipeg by any means. But the fact was the team played hard behind Matt Dunnigan. They played for Matt Dunnigan, and he won games for them. He won the Grey Cup for them, and when they lost him, it changed everything. But Bruce McNall is right. Bruce McNall right now is set to lose about $6 million in his 2 years with this franchise. His biggest problem right now is the Rocket, because it was an experiment that failed miserably. The Rocket's making almost $4 million a year. Boy, oh boy, you take the Rocket out of the mix, and they're making money in Toronto. It was just a huge mistake, and the problem is he can't get rid of him, really, unless the Rocket wants to go, because he's got a 4-year deal with a 2-year out, but the Rocket has to make the decision. And Al Davis in Los Angeles, who owns his rights in the NFL, isn't going to pay him $4 million a year.
Wow. So, Colleen,
The PR people at the Argos, too, Tina, they didn't really do their job from last year and capitalize on the Grey Cup champions, and they didn't capitalize on the Rocket. When you think back to last year and they had John Candy's Express going right across Canada and really hyping the CFL, all of that fizzled as soon as the season was over. They should have kept pushing it. For once, people down here were interested in the CFL. I mean, that has faded somewhat, too. They should have, just kept that drumbeat going, and
the sad part is, Colleen, that the whole league didn't capitalize on it. Larry Smith's office didn't do the job. Before Don Crump was gone, he didn't do the job. The league as a whole hasn't picked up on Rocket Ismail and made, I mean, they haven't picked up on Doug Flutie, who is still a star in Calgary, but they haven't done the job coast to coast selling these guys. And that's the big difference between what was potentially a lousy Monday night football game last night and a whole bunch of lousy CFL games this year.
Okay, let's move to the BC Lions. Doug Flutie moved, I gather, from the BC Lions to Calgary, and the BC Lions aren't doing so well. What's going on there, Colleen?
I think a lot of mismanagement from Murray Pezim. It's more than just Doug Flutie moving out. Pezim bailed out last month, and now they're without an owner in BC. They're drawing 12,000 fans a game. The new owner, when he comes in, is going to be looking at $1 million losses. Pezim claims he lost $5 million there. The league's in there trying to, revive another team. It seems like a recurring theme with the CFL. Which team is in trouble this year, and who are we going to rescue? Right now it's the BC Lions. They're failing at the box office, on the field, and in ownership too.
Scott, are they going to survive, the BC Lions?
Well, the league is going to guarantee they survive, but it may cost the league other teams. The problem right now is they can't find an owner, although Larry Smith says he has one, although it wasn't Jim Pattison this week. The BC Lions are like a great big giant toilet, and you've got a shovel and a pile of money, and you flush it into the toilet, and you flush, and down it goes. I mean, the BC Lions can't make money this year. The deal that everybody wants is a chunk of BC Place Stadium. BC Place isn't going to roll over. They're not giving it away. Now he's got a problem finding an owner the rest of the year. The league has to pump money into the team. It's going to cause other teams to lose more money. Boy, it's a big schmozzle. The best thing they could do, if he doesn't find an owner in about a week, is shut it down for this year and bring it back up on December 1st. He'll find about 5 or 6 owners by then.
Okay, we're going to have to go.
Who wants to invest in a team that's losing all that money?
Yeah,
You're right.
This is too embarrassing and humiliating for me. We're going to have to...